Ever wondered how dark humanity can get when it comes to punishment and coercion? Well, to shed some light on this grim subject, we're venturing into the chilling world of historical torture devices. These instruments of horror weren't simply tools of sadistic pleasure, they were products of their time, born out of societal norms, belief systems, and the judicial practices that prevailed. Torture devices have been a part of human history for millennia, with their roots reaching back to the cradle of civilization. Their use wasn't restricted to any particular region or culture. Rather, they were a grim testament to the universal human capacity for cruelty when power is unchecked. They served a multitude of purposes, from punishment for crimes to tools of interrogation, and even as a means of deterrence, intended to instill fear and maintain order. In the context of punishment, the gruesomeness of these devices was often a reflection of the perceived severity of the crime. From the petty thief to the treasonous conspirator, the punishment was designed to fit the crime, and it was often a public spectacle, a powerful message to any who might dare to transgress. For interrogation, these devices were employed as a means to extract confessions or valuable information. The pain inflicted was so severe that many would confess to anything just to make it stop. It's a chilling reminder of the lengths to which people would go to maintain power and control. As a deterrent, the mere sight of these devices, let alone their use, was enough to keep many a potential wrongdoer on the straight and narrow. Their existence served as a stark reminder of the potential consequences of stepping out of line. But as we delve into this macabre history, it's worth remembering that these devices are a reflection of humanity's darkest hours. They're a testament to the depths we can sink when empathy and justice are cast aside in favor of power and control. So, let's dive into the grim past and start our journey with the earliest known torture devices. The earliest known torture devices date back to the ancient times, where the value of human life was often overlooked. In a world where power and control reigned supreme, some of the earliest civilizations devised brutal methods to instill fear, extract confessions, or simply to punish. Let's take a journey back to ancient Greece. This was a civilization known for its philosophy and democracy, but it also had a sinister side. Here, one of the most notorious torture devices was the rack. This horrific contraption stretched its victims out on a wooden frame, their wrists and ankles bound to rollers at either end. As the torturers turned the rollers, the victim's body was stretched to unbearable lengths. Imagine the sound of snapping bones and tearing ligaments echoing through the torture chambers. The rack was not just a device of physical torment, but also a psychological one, with victims often witnessing the torture of others before their turn came. Now, let's travel to the heart of the Roman Empire, where one of the most infamous forms of execution took place, the crucifixion. This wasn't just a form of execution, it was a public spectacle designed to deter others. Victims were nailed or tied to a cross and left to die a slow, agonizing death. The Romans were masters of making the victim's suffering last. Dehydration, blood loss, suffocation, the crucifixion was a methodical, calculated process of inducing pain and suffering. These ancient civilizations, while renowned for their contributions to art, philosophy, and governance, also had a darker side. They utilized these brutal methods to instill fear, control populations, and maintain power. As civilizations evolved, so did their methods of inflicting pain, leading to the development of more sophisticated and gruesome torture devices. The evolution of torture devices is a stark reminder of humanity's capacity for cruelty, a chilling testament to the dark corners of our history. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, a period often associated with the most horrifying torture devices. As we delve into this grim epic, we encounter a chilling array of instruments designed to inflict maximum pain and terror. Let's take, for instance, the infamous Iron Maiden. Not to be confused with the beloved heavy metal band, this Iron Maiden was a sarcophagus outfitted with inward-facing spikes. The victim was placed inside and the door was slowly closed, the spikes piercing their flesh but not quite striking vital organs, prolonging the agony. Then, there was the Scavenger's Daughter, a grotesque parody of the birthing chair. It was designed to compress the body in such a way that blood gushed from the nose and ears. The sheer pressure could even cause the eyes to pop out. It was a spectacle of horror, a testament to the macabre creativity of the human mind when it's focused on causing suffering. The Middle Ages saw an increased use of such torture devices, a trend largely driven by the era's socio-political climate. The church and the state used these methods as a means to assert dominance, extract confessions, and instill fear among the populace. The law was often arbitrary and the punishment severe. The effects of these devices were both physical and psychological. They left survivors maimed and traumatized, their lives forever scarred by the experience. The mere sight of these devices, let alone their use, served to intensify the climate of fear and oppression. Yet, even in the face of such grim realities, there's a certain twisted fascination that these devices inspire. They serve as a stark reminder of our ability for cruelty, a mirror reflecting the darkest corners of the human psyche. They stand as testament to our capacity for invention, albeit directed towards the most sinister of purposes. While the Middle Ages might have been the peak of physical torture, the era of psychological torture was just around the corner. And with that ominous thought, we prepare to step into the next chapter of our exploration into the dark history of torture devices. As we moved into modern times, physical torture devices became less common, replaced by psychological torture techniques. This shift marked a dark evolution in human cruelty, where the tormentors began to understand that the mind, much like the body, could be broken and manipulated. The reasons for this shift are multifaceted. Physical torture, while undeniably brutal, leaves visible evidence of abuse. Psychological torture, however, operates in the shadows of the mind, leaving no trace of its existence externally. This makes it far more insidious, as its effects are often dismissed or overlooked due to the lack of physical evidence. One common technique of psychological torture is sensory deprivation. This involves isolating the victim from all sensory experiences, plunging them into a world of darkness and silence. Imagine being trapped in a void with no light, no sound, no human contact. The human mind is not built for such emptiness. It begins to fill the void with its own creations, often leading to hallucinations and a distorted sense of reality. Another technique is psychological manipulation, which involves distorting or denying the victim's perception of reality. This can be as simple as gaslighting, where the torturer convinces the victim that their memories or perceptions are false. Or it could be as complex as brainwashing, where the victim's beliefs and values are systematically dismantled and replaced with those of the torturer. The effects of these techniques can be just as devastating as physical torture, if not more so. Victims often suffer from severe mental health issues, such as post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and depression. They may have difficulty trusting others or even their own perceptions. The psychological scars left by these techniques can last a lifetime, long after the torture has ended. While these techniques might not leave physical scars, their psychological impact can be just as devastating. From ancient times to modern days, the methods of torture have evolved, but the cruelty remains the same. This journey through the annals of history has taken us to some of the darkest corners of human civilization. We've seen mankind's ingenious yet horrifying creativity in devising mechanisms of pain and punishment, from the crude implements of ancient times to the complex psychological techniques of the modern era. We started by delving into the ancient world, where physical torture was as much a public spectacle as it was a form of punishment. The devices of this era were simple, yet brutal, designed to inflict maximum pain and humiliation. The rack, the wheel, the brazen bull. These are just a few examples of the kind of visceral horror that ancient societies used to enforce their laws and norms. As we moved into the Middle Ages and beyond, we saw how torture became more sophisticated and more terrifying. The Iron Maiden, the Judas Cradle, the Pair of Anguish. These devices were no longer just about causing pain, but about instilling fear. The art of torture had become a science, with each new device more gruesome than the last. In the modern era, the focus shifted from physical torture to psychological. Techniques like sensory deprivation, sleep deprivation, and solitary confinement may not leave visible scars, but they can cause profound psychological damage. The debate rages on about the place of these techniques in our society, as we grapple with questions of human rights, ethical boundaries, and the very definition of cruelty. As we close this exploration of the dark history of torture devices, we are left with a chilling reminder of our capacity for cruelty. We must strive to remember these grim lessons from our past, to ensure we do not repeat them in our future. As we reflect on these grim methods of punishment, we must ask ourselves, how far is too far when it comes to inflicting pain?